Councilmember Mackin. Councilmember Pierce.
Here.
Councilmember Pinot.
Here.
Councilmember Beckwith.
Here.
Councilmember Petzko.
Here.
Councilmember Hazelbaker.
Here.
Councilmember Houts.
Here.
Mayor Kramer.
I'm here. We've heard from Councilman Ortiz, who would ask he be excused. Someone would make that motion.
So moved.
Support. We have a motion, we have support. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? He's excused. We have a spot on our agenda now, and we have a spot on our agenda at the end of the meeting for public comments. Anyone would like to address the council, they may do so now. We do want to welcome a team member back from the injured reserve. Our DMS director is back to the land of the living, so welcome back, David.
Brand new hip, baby.
And that's not the part that needed replacing, but that's okay. Is there any other public comments? If not, we'll move to our consent agenda. These are items we consider to be routine. We'll take them in one motion unless someone up here or someone in the audience wants it removed for further clarification. Tonight, we have our minutes of June 24th, DDA minutes of May 22nd, and our financial reports for May of 19. Anybody in the audience want clarification? Anybody up here? Motion to approve the consent agenda then.
So moved. Support.
We have a motion and support. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Anybody opposed? Motion did carry. Number 4, bills and accounts, $211,235. Questions? Or a motion?
Motion to pay our bills, Your Honor. Support.
We have a motion and support. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Anybody opposed? Bills are paid. Number 5, city manager report. Keith.
Thank you, Your Honor. Council, good evening. First, we'd like to recognize a new employee that was recently hired. Kathy Waltz has started with the Coldwater Police Department on June 27th. Mrs. Waltz comes to the city from the Coldwater Community Schools, where she worked for various roles for 32 years. And we'd just like to welcome Kathy to the organization on behalf of the city of Coldwater and the employees. Secondly, relative to a whole list of community events, we've now had 2 weeks of farmers market. The first week had over 1,000 people visit, and over this past weekend, of course, they experienced some rain, so I'm sure that was down a little bit, but it's been well received and is getting a large turnout, and will now take place every Saturday from 9 to 1 through September until Applefest. Another community event which has been expanded upon this year is coming up in a couple weeks on Saturday, July 20th. It's Arts Alive. This year's event will include food vendors, juried artists, music, beer and wine tent will be available as well. So look for that in the Chandler parking lot in South Monroe Street. We've approved the closure again of South Monroe Street for that event, and that'll be taking place on Saturday, July 20th. And I also believe that leads into a concert that Tibbetts has that evening as well. So another busy night in the community on Saturday, July 20th. Entertainment of the Stars kicked off this past week. Unfortunately, we too had rain, and that was an event that was sponsored by the CVPU. And so that has been rescheduled with the Jim Stout Band for Thursday, August 1st. So that particular week we'll have 2 concerts. We'll have one on the Tuesday of that week and Thursday, and that works out. We don't conflict with other communities' concerts in the park and with the band's schedule. So look for that. They're again sponsored by the Coldwater Board of Public Utilities for Entertainment of the Stars on Thursday, August 1st, and then the subsequent next, they're again tomorrow night and the following 3 weeks. Relative to city construction projects, Thompson Boulevard, well, I appreciate the coverage in the media, and Parrish Excavating informed me that they didn't get mobilized today, but they are scheduled to get mobilized this week. You'll see them arrive on site and begin construction work for the construction and extension of Thompson Boulevard. South Monroe Street was recently seal coated and will be restriped here shortly. Chandler Plaza, I wasn't out there today, but I'm getting the head shake that the contractor didn't complete that today, but that work is scheduled to be completed here shortly for the replacement of some of the mulch with stones so that it doesn't back up and clog the drain during rain events. And then lastly, South Jefferson Street, that is just there again another note to that ongoing construction project, and on all accounts it seems to be progressing appropriately. A couple other updates. We had a very successful 4th of July event by accounts of social media and from staff that we didn't have any problems that evening. And so we appreciate the Public Works Department, the DMS, for all they do for setup for that and clean up afterwards, for the police department and fire departments as well that participate in putting on that event, as well as the Coldwater Noon and Coldwater Sunrise Rotary Clubs for raising the money for the annual fireworks event. The dog park, we recently installed a water fountain at the dog park. That was something that was on the list of things both within the recreation plan and one of those things that was requested of by the users of the dog park over a number of years. And so with the completion of the ball fields, we were able to extend a water line far enough to accommodate that. So there again, one more amenity to include as part of the dog park. And then lastly, when I wrote this, obviously didn't think that we'd get some social media traffic today, but Kids Kingdom and Parkhurst Park and Optimist Park, which was the subject of some comments today, are getting mulch. And so they will have mulch installed that's scheduled for this week. So be on the lookout for that. As it pertains to Kids Kingdom and Optimist Park, because of the constraints of either the fencing or the structures themselves, we actually have a contractor blow that in. So there's an additional level of complexity or that gets in installing that mulch for those locations, and so but those should be done hopefully by the end of the week.
What
Yes.
about that Farmers Park, they relocated the playground equipment, see what the green mulch of that?
Is there not sand there? I have to follow up with.
It doesn't look like it's enough, whatever's there.
I'm not intimately familiar with that. And that's what I have for the report.
Great. Thanks, Keith. Questions for Keith? Motion to approve the city manager report then?
So moved.
Support. Motion, we have support. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Anybody opposed? Motion carried. Number 6, we have a presentation by the Davie Resource Group on the tree inventory for the city of Coldwater. Dean's going to lead this off.
I just wanted to introduce Lee Mueller from the Davie Resource Group. Davie was down in the area at the end of April, beginning of May, doing a tree inventory. They inventoried over 5,000 trees. That was part of the state grant that we had received. So with that, I'll let Lee take over.
Greetings, thanks for having me. I know our team really enjoyed being part of your community for a few weeks, but they were moving around, identifying all of the trees that are within the public realm in the city of Coldwater. So it's every tree between the sidewalk and the street, and then most of them in the parks as well as the cemetery. I believe we have a presentation. Again, my name is Lee Mueller. I work for Davie Resource Group. I manage Michigan's operations with my team that was here working with Dean and Dave on this inventory. We can go to the next slide. Just real briefly, sort of the data we collected on every tree included the location, GPS coordinates and address, as well as the species of that tree, the size of the tree, where it's located, was it in a park, a median, between the sidewalk and the street, and what is that site like, the condition of the tree, is it in good health or poor health, primary maintenance need, does the tree need to be removed, pruned, what have you, and then of course the utility presence. Are there electrical utilities within that right of way as well that you need to be worried about if you're about to maintain that tree? Next slide. Looks like some things are missing from here, but we collected a total of 5,503 total trees and stumps, and I'm going to get closer to this to look. We had 43% maple, 8% oak, 6% spruce, 5% pear, 5% cherry, and other species of 34%. In my industry, we tend to talk about a standard of, it's called 10, 20, 30 standard. So you should have no more than 10% of any one species, no more than 20% of any one genus, and more than 30% of any one family. That's to prevent issues like emerald ash borer, where you have way too much of one kind of tree, then you lose a bunch of trees that get invasive pest. So with 43% maple, that is a relatively high level of maple. That's a genera, so that should be closer to 20%. Now, for a Michigan community, you're not out of the realm of what every other community is dealing with. There's a lot of maples in Michigan, but something to think about as you continue to plant trees. Next slide. Tree condition, roughly 72% of your trees were in good condition, and you had 4% that were reported dead. This is higher than average, what I see with other communities. You would usually see a lot more fair trees. The best here is good, then fair, then poor, and then dead. Next slide. Looking at the diameter class distribution, we like to see sort of a downward slope here. That means that as trees age, you're losing them. That's natural tendencies. And if you have more on the left end of this graph, it means you're also replacing the trees as you go. You have a fairly even distribution. Normally, you would see a greater slope, which means there might just be more opportunities for planting in this community. Next slide. Actually, one comment I want to make is a lot of communities are interested in this. Your largest trees. There's a 63-inch eastern cottonwood in Heritage Park, and then there's a 60-inch bur oak that's on the 100 block of Northwest. So those are your two sort of largest trees. As far as maintenance, maintenance needs that we identified, the majority are discretionary prunes. This is what we call a cyclical prune. So if you do a tree maintenance cycle, you just take care of those as part of your cycle. Most communities don't necessarily have the resources to have that type of maintenance cycle. And so you're taking care of some of the other issues that are identified. If we articulated a prune here, it means there's some sort of risk prune that should take place. So there might be a dead branch hanging over the street or sidewalk, so that's something to think about. Removals are relatively few in your case, but these are trees that, due to either their health or their position, need to be considered for removal. And stump removal is self-explanatory. A trained tree would be for smaller trees. It's a lot cheaper to prune trees when they're small and encourage them to grow the way they should grow than it is to wait till they get very large. So this is where we identified some opportunities for that. Next slide. We did provide our software for a year for free for the city to sort of manage their inventory data. This is going to prove useful because, unfortunately, right after we completed the inventory, there was a storm. And you lost some of your trees and some things changed. So this tool is going to allow the city staff to take the records from that storm response and update the data so that it remains current immediately. So that's something that the team is working on right now. They have records to make those changes, and this software will help them do it. After the year, I believe the intention is just to integrate this as part of the city's GIS system. Next slide. So, just to summarize sort of the findings that, to me, as sort of an external view looking at your tree data, number one, limit the use of maple. As you're planting new trees, I would reduce the amount of maple to help encourage your species distribution. We identified some removals and prunes to prioritize those along your major thoroughfares, your emergency routes, within business districts is where I would start using these data. That's where you have the highest potential people and vehicles around. We identified a bunch of young tree trains. Getting some early pruning on those trees will prevent problems in the long run, so that's something worth looking at. And then using the tree keeper software we have here to make some immediate changes as the work is being done will help ensure your inventory data are up to date. And then I always recommend communities think about doing what we call a level 1 survey, which is a windshield survey essentially of the entire community on an annual basis or after a major storm, just to make sure you're being systematic and taking care of any issues as opposed to waiting for calls or requests. And then we generally recommend in the industry updating inventories on about a 7-year basis. So that's either updating as you're going out and taking care of work, or it's maybe doing a 7th of your community every year, and that can be done in-house, or having something like this redone every 7 to 10 years. With that, I'm open to any questions.
Question?
In particular, and this might be a Dave question, Oak Grove Cemetery has huge ancient trees, and it looks like they're all going to die at the same time. Are you familiar with Oak Grove Cemetery, the old part? Are they all the same age?
I mean, they're within the same size class, and trees decline at different rates, so I wouldn't expect them all to go within a buy and expand. It's going to happen slowly. But if those trees are an asset, it would make sense to start thinking about as you lose some of those, how would you replant them? Cemeteries are notoriously difficult to plant trees in, particularly because, people own plots and may not want a tree on that plot. But there are sometimes ways to make that work within the maintenance constraints of the cemetery as well.
What would designate a tree being fair or poor? Obviously, leaves are all on dead, that's I understand, but just a couple thoughts.
Yeah, so it's basically a health rating of the tree, and part of that is based on, if you look up at the tree, like you say, parts are going to have leaves and some parts may not. But it also goes to the structure of the tree. Are there parts of the tree that are hollow or show signs of decay? Is the tree branching at the appropriate pattern for that species, or is clustered branching, or dual competing leaders, different things that might be a structural weakness in the tree? So our arborists take all of that into account and assign a rating based on that.
Is there any timber value to any of it?
So in some cases, there could be trees that would have value. The challenge is these trees are often going to be in an environment where the cost of removal exceeds the value of the tree. So if the city is removing a tree and they can remove the tree in a way that they preserve a whole log section, which requires equipment, then you may be able to sell those logs on the back end. But that is an outlier as opposed to a rule. The other thing to think about is that if you're removing trees in the city, you're usually removing those trees because there's some sort of problem defect, which also reduces the value. So it's pretty rare.
Other questions? What do we do with it, I guess more for staff, but we have this information of 130 trees that need to be taken down, we have a lot of pruning, do we then contract with Ashmont or whatever is there a schedule then to follow this?
I think this gives, for our contract with Aspen, which I think this is actually a positive reflection on the fact that through the BPU and the city, we have a crew that's dedicated to tree trimming on a daily basis. And so I think that's reflected in the nature of the level of the quality of the trees that we have. But it also gives a to-do list. So whether it's the stump removal, which we already had, but for those that need trimming or those that need other work, I mean, it is the to-do list. You can use the software to create your yep.
Any other questions? Good report, we appreciate it very much.
Thanks so much for having me.
Number 7, a letter from Keith Baker regarding the bid for the Garfield Avenue substation drain project. Keith?
Thank you, Your Honor. What you have before you is the bid for 740 feet of drainage ditch, which we're proposing to be cleaned out. This is on would be the south and east sides of the Garfield Avenue substation, adjoining the John Fast roofing property and adjoining the former Republic transfer station, and then the railroad property to the south. So if you can recall, during the course of heavy rain events over the last couple of years, we've had increasingly severe flooding problems in this area, and the water not getting to the Garfield culvert and jumping the bank and getting over onto washing out the parking lot and property of Fast Roofing. It floods the intersection of Treat Avenue just off to the right of that aerial photo. And so this is an interim step to the larger project that we've petitioned the County Drain Commissioner to do, but this would provide hopefully some immediate relief for flooding in that area. And we're looking at utilizing remaining LDFA funds that we had that can only be used in that area. And we sought bids for that. We received 3 bids, and the lowest of which is from Thompson Construction in the amount of $48,450. And you have in the memo the explanation as to why the vast difference or variance between the lowest and second lowest bidders, that being the equipment they have available to use and the materials that they already have in hand, and that we've verified with each of those three through our engineer that they're capable of doing it for that price. So I'm seeking your approval to award the bid to Thompson Construction for the Garfield Avenue substation, which is resolution number 1944.
Does Thompson have bigger equipment or smaller equipment?
Brian? Brian Dempsey is the engineer that's worked on this contractually for us and has spoken with each of the companies.
So Thompson's equipment is generally the same. It's more of a backhoe type rather than the large excavator type. So it's more of a type of a process that they're going to use.
So Thompson's going to take longer.
They would take longer. Yes, they would take a little longer.
What's the time difference?
They probably take about 3 weeks rather than a week and a half. Their biggest price difference is, like they said, they already have a bunch of materials sitting in their yard that they need to find a way to get rid of. If you look at the project, this is a pretty small project. The biggest piece of it is along that John Fast side there, we're putting a berm, and that's where there's about 700 cubic yards of clay that needs to be hauled in to build a berm to hold that in here, and that's the material that they have in their yard that they're trying to get rid of. So,
And that's all been inspected?
what's that?
What they're moving in there, that's the right stuff, we've inspected it?
Yep, yep.
Any questions for Brian? You're comfortable with his recommendation and awarding the contract as recommended?
I have not worked with Thompson in the past. I'm comfortable with the price and the materials, but like I said, I have not worked with Thompson myself. So.
And who'll be monitoring this for completion and quality and stuff? Who'll be in charge of both?
You're looking at the two people that are responsible for that.
Thank you.
Any guarantees,
Thanks, Brian.
any contractual time constraints that if they don't get it done, we see if we're going to, I would say, a smaller contract.
Well, from a workmanship standpoint, and you know, they have a 1-year warranty. What was the second part of that? Well, they're using, essentially they're removing soil and they're adding soil. Those are essentially the
Do we have a
two parts.
guaranteed completion date?
We didn't, the bidding documents, we didn't.
Yeah, there is not a guaranteed completion date on the project. There is, the other question you had, there is a maintenance bond on the project that's required.
Right.
So, but there is not a guaranteed completion.
But if they have equipment issues or something, it could be 3 months, not 3 weeks.
General question, Keith, if they put that picture back up, when it goes to the road, does that go underneath and into a culvert onto the lake?
Well, a culvert under Garfield to the north, and then it hangs a right to the east and runs down to HC Star.
And that's an open,
Part of it is open,
okay.
part of it's underground, and then it goes north, you know, behind HC Star. And eventually it does, yes, make it to the river and to the lake, but there's a route in which it follows to get there.
We have a recommendation. It's rather small and the cost savings is sizable, so the recommendation is to adopt resolution 1944. Pleasure.
So moved.
Support.
We have motion and support. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Anybody opposed? Motion carries. Thanks, Brian. Number 8 is a letter from Keith regarding approving the design and authorization to purchase of Mishka modular home. Keith.
Thank you, Your Honor. We've reached a point at which we'd like to order a home for this project that's being supported through a grant from the Michigan State Housing Development Authority. The grant was purposely for a modular home. The city sought quotes from a number of home builders and providers. The one in which we've selected for your consideration is General Housing out of Bay City. They're the lowest because, there's so many variables in speccing a house. It's a little bit difficult to compare apples to apples. but they're the lowest because in their particular case, we can buy wholesale versus retail through a local franchisee or vendor. And so there are a couple of other manufacturers that do operate in this area. And we did reach out to them, but their prices would be through them and not through General Housing or a other manufacturer that we could otherwise buy at a reduced wholesale price. So that's what we're proposing in this case. The home itself would be 3-bedroom, 2-bath. It would include a garage and a full basement, flat work, HVAC, all those things would be added to the actual purchase price ultimately. So as we've talked through this process, we discussed that we would bring back in the proposed design. This is the house that we've spec'd. This is an example that they built elsewhere of the actual house that we're proposing, as even down to potentially the color, because that color is in use in that neighborhood currently, or in close proximity. So Bob Granger has gone through the process of speccing and bidding the home, and we've compared. He and I and another staff member actually went to the manufacturer's facility in Bay City to see the production line of the sections of the homes as they get built. So we know that they exist. We know what the nature of the construction is. It's 6-inch walls, fully insulated. We're looking from the standpoint of the city and BPU, we're looking at making these as energy efficient as possible. And so with that, MISTA is very eager for us to get underway. We would be the first in this pilot program. There's probably a dozen communities that are in various stages of approval for this project that they've also granted funds to build homes around the state for the purpose of meeting a particular price point. So these aren't executive homes, these aren't entry-level or very low-income necessarily homes, but these are homes that are not being built in the market otherwise, and homes that could potentially be financed by a 2-income family in communities that are seeing significant employment growth, in our case, Clemens being the catalyst there. So these discussions started probably 2 years ago as to what is needed within our state and within our community to spur residential development that's currently not being met by the market, and to meet that price point, whether it's 150, 175, or 200, it's going to be a modular, pre-manufactured product. And so we've had actually, within that ensuing couple of years, we've had other examples from local vendors that have installed homes around the community as well. So this would kickstart our Thompson Boulevard project, and we're seeking approval to award the bid to General Housing, and to allow us to order that, and for you to obviously sign off on the nature of the design of it for that neighborhood.
Question, Keith, from a timing standpoint, how quickly can this be done? Does Thompson develop the road have to be done first before this happens?
They can be done concurrently. The actual construction of the home will take about 10 to 12 weeks. So at the point that we order, the delivery date's about 3 months beyond. So this gives us an opportunity to complete the home at about the time that the road is proposed to be completed. The basement we would be doing while the road is being completed, so we're getting quotes on the basement, and so that's how the timing would work out. We'd like to have something in place so that you can market it this fall.
That's good. And what is MISTA, what advantage is MISTA, what incentives, or how are they helping us with this? What makes it appealing for us to go through MISTA or the buyers, either one?
So they are covering the entire cost of the home up to $196,000. So any cost incurred in developing this house up to $196,000 is reimbursable through MISTA. So in this case, the actual home itself is about $97,000 plus all the other add-ons and the cost, and we're rolling in then the cost of the land as well. And the development costs, we're trying to recoup as much, if not all, of the development costs of the infrastructure per lot. So when we give those 187 to 197 price range, that includes recouping that development cost that we've incurred in the purchase of the lots today and the infrastructure costs that we're going to be incurring as part of the Thompson Road extension. And then MISTA also, this house will qualify then for, if the buyer themselves meets certain income requirements, can qualify for a $7,500 down payment assistance, which then offsets the purchase price of the house. And there are a couple different financing options through USDA Rural Development and through MISTA for the actual home buyers. So the home buyer themselves could even utilize whether it's a bank or a mortgage company that utilizes USDA or through MISTA as the guarantor or lender for the home.
One night, Mr. Granger has firm bids for all the subs, so we know what our final that includes landscaping, grading, and driveway, and all that.
Correct. We're still getting the final bids, but we have, I'll say we have worst case scenarios on all of those with the idea that they would be less than.
Other questions for Keith?
When we first discussed this house and the design and the style, one of them concerns is not have a low pitched roof. What pitch roof is on that house?
I believe this was 6 on 12. So it's, yes, it is. That's one of the.
That's what it looks like, but I didn't see it in the description anywhere.
So we bid it that way. There again, there's a slight price increase for that, but we've incorporated that to have the steeper roof.
Basement, ceiling, wall nines.
We're gonna.
Just that.
No, it'll be a basement, and we're looking at. But there again, at the final price, we're going to determine whether it's. I think there's like a $1,500 difference in going between 8 and 9 foot basement.
And then is that, it's for a basement, I'm assuming.
Right.
Insulated exterior.
It'll be whatever, yes, the standard.
How many of these are we going to do per year?
I think it depends on sale and interest, obviously. So the intent is, or the availability is that if we sell this one, we are eligible to do another one with the grant, with the reutilizing the funds in which we received from the grant and flip it into another house. Or if this house could sit on the market for 3 years before we would have to reimburse MISTA for it if it didn't sell, or you could use it for, you could either use it for a model, or you could just sell it as is and then build another one. So
They did tell us that after 1 year, if it didn't sell, they would reevaluate the price in the market. They could conceivably lower the price on it, not penalizing us. They would take the hit.
right, yep, and there's provisions for that as well, that within a 10% range. And if it exceeds 10%, then we can, because we already have the land costs and the infrastructure costs in, what we're talking about would be whether or not we recoup all of that, not necessarily what we would be able to recoup as the grant, because the grant is for $100,000 or $696 for the house, and then the garage and the basement and fireworks. So.
Good project, good discussion.
Well, there's a brand new stick-built house just across the street from where we're proposing this. that sold for, I believe, $226,000. There are other manufactured and modular homes within the neighborhood. There's a home for sale on the corner of Sealy and Thompson in that 210 range, I believe, or two.
Well, I think it lowered a little bit, but yeah, now it's on about 2 teens.
So we're definitely trying to be under the, right at or under the neighborhood price point and provide a value, but also a product that isn't necessarily being met in the market currently.
Was there a patio? I didn't see it in the specs anywhere. Was there provisions for a patio in the back?
I believe so, but we haven't talked that specific. It'd be part of the flat work. It's having built the house 5 years ago. It's a pretty small addition to the flat work. Yeah.
Right.
Okay, good questions. Any other? Good project, good explanation. They're looking for, we need a motion to either adopt or not adopt Resolution 1945.
Move to adopt Resolution 1945.
Questions? All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Anybody opposed? Motion carried. Now our fire chief is chomping at the bit to spend some money. So Dave, regarding turnout gear.
Yes, sir, Mr. Mayor and Council. I'm come tonight to ask permission to purchase 6 sets of turnout gear for the fire department. And turnout gear comprises of the jacket and the pants and an ensemble, which is our personal protective equipment when we go any type of a hazardous material, or excuse me, hazardous materials or hazardous environments such as, i.e., fighting fire. NFPA 1851 requires that we replace that turnout gear every 10 years. And that has also been adopted by OSHA Part 74, so I'm required to follow that rule. And our current inventory right now is approaching that. So what I tried to develop was a replacement schedule so that we're not coming in front of council and asking for $60,000, $70,000 all at once. So we're going to try to buy 5, 6 sets every year, and sometimes it'll be a little bit less just based off of the current inventory that we have within that 10-year time. So we went out and got three bids from 3 different manufacturers that we liked as far as fit and comfort and design, based on, not to try to get too far into the weeds, but there's a thing called TPP and THL, which is thermal protection properties and thermal heat liners, so again, the breathability of the gear, because we don't want to maintain that heat within us. And between that, we came up with the best numbers, set up the spec, and then Phoenix Outfitters came up with the best price for us at a little over $13,000. So with that, I'll open up any questions.
How many total sets do we have for all the personnel?
Everyone right now has 1 set, but I have some that are due to expire here at the end of the year, and some that they're damaged enough that I cannot get them replaced and repaired, so I need to replace those. So this will probably be one of my biggest purchases is 6. I think next year I'm scheduled to purchase 3, but I don't have anything in stock at this point because everything we had down in the basement was pushing 15 plus years, so I had to get rid of that. And I'm hoping to bring on, as I said earlier in the year, 3 more parfaits, so I'm going to need some money to purchase them some gear as well.
So we have 14
full-time, 14 full-time and
10.
7 parfait right now.
But these
We've always budgeted 10.
one size fits all.
Oh no, they have to be, they bring in sizing sets because they have to be custom fit to each individual.
Right. So I'm just looking, because you're just going to order them now for inventory for later?
No, sir. No, it'll actually be for there's 6, I have 5 full-time and 1 parfait that all need new gear.
Okay.
So the manufacturer will come in, give us sizing sets, custom fitted to us, and then we go ahead and place that order and they come in for those guys.
Thank you. Good question.
So I guess my point was if we had 24 full-time and 10 part-time or part-paid, then you get 24 sets, and then if you're replacing anywhere from 3 to 6 sets at a time, that's the schedule.
Questions? If not, the chief is looking for adoption of resolution 1946.
Motion to adopt resolution 1946.
Support.
We have motion and support. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Anybody opposed? Motion carried. Number 10, a memo from our chief regarding purchase of hose.
Yes, along the same lines as with the turnout gear, there's a standard that dictates how long we're allowed to keep fire hose in service. And right now, that is anything that was manufactured prior to June of 1987 is supposed to be removed from service, which equates to about half of our inventory. I have hose that I don't have even records dating back to when they were purchased. So to bring us back up into compliance, I'm looking for this one big purchase that we discussed during capital improvement for the purchase price of about $20,000. And then we asked for 25 because we do hose testing in October, and I wanted to keep a little bit extra money in case some of that hose fails during hose testing to get us through that. Going forward, I don't anticipate a big purchase like this anytime. We'll just, again, this replacement schedule, as we start to get close to that 20-year mark of that hose, we'll start to go ahead and replace that in sections. But at this point, to get us where we need to be to help reduce the type of liability, we need to replace these sections.
Questions for Chief?
What, is this in your budget?
Yes, sir. Yeah, the hose was for the capital improvement. It was approved in the budget. And then, yeah, for the turnout gear, yeah, I factored that in as well.
So the budget that was adopted at the last meeting, this does accommodate or account for it.
That's not our additional.
Right, it's not an additional expense, it's what we had planned for. And he happens to be first in line at the first meeting after the fiscal year. Followed shortly by the purchase of police patrol vehicles here.
No other questions? We're looking for a motion to either adopt or not adopt resolution 1947.
Move to adopt 1947.
Support. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Anybody opposed? Motion carried. Thank you, Chief.
Thank you.
We have a spot on our agenda finally for public comments. We have old business, unfinished business at council level. We have new business. We're adjourned.